focus more on global content, on hearing stories from all over the world. So I'm going to start by having our other panelists, and we're going to run this more like a discussion, introduce themselves, and particularly focused on how each of you got your start. And let's start with you, Randy.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Randy Kleiner. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Series Fest. Oh, wow, how I got my start.
Yeah,
I really got my start in theater and worked in New York City at the Public Theater and then went on to produce the New York Film Festival and film at Lincoln Center's 13 festivals a year. From there, I went on to own my own experiential event company where I worked with brands all over the world to help them tell their stories through kind of immersive and experiential events. So as you can see, everything for me has always been about telling stories and about finding creative ways to tell stories. In 2013, 2014, I had the idea for Series Fest, and that really came about by I knew filmmakers who were making independent pilots. And I knew what an independent film was, but I said, what's an independent pilot? And they would say, you know, it's a fully produced first episode of a TV series that they had, you know, created. And I said, well, what do you do with that? And they said, well, we're trying to break into the studio and network system using this fully created pilot episode. And I thought that was really interesting. And I said, well, did it work? And they would say, no, it's sitting on my shelf. And I thought, well, that seems a little crazy. So I started to meet with some network executives that I knew from NBC, ABC, et cetera, and I would say, you know, how are you finding new talent? How are you finding new and diverse stories and creators to tell those stories? And their answers were all over the board. I mean, they really didn't have a good answer, and then they would say, but we can't compete with Netflix. And in the United States, Netflix was really at that time in 2013, 2014, really on the rise and doing things very differently. So I saw a real opportunity I saw a real hunger for new and diverse and creative content, and a real opportunity to do something unique. I felt coming from a film world, when you want to go see the next great director, next great film, you go into, you go to the Sundance Film Festival, you go to the Cannes Film Festival or Berlinale Film Festival, and I thought, or the Red Sea Film Festival here, and I thought, why can't we do that for television? Why can't we uplift new content, new creators, connect them with established industry executives, and create a marketplace for television series? As well as celebrate what was happening in series, which, you know, again, if you think back 10, 12 years ago, the quality has changed. You know, the amount of international content has changed. Just felt like there was such an opportunity to bring people together in a community way and celebrate the television world. So in 2015, we decided to launch Series Fest. We started as a 2-day festival. We are now a year-round organization and a 6-day festival that's coming up in May. We show big US network premieres. For example, we did the world premiere of Yellowstone, and we have all the cast and creative team come out. We do international series, so we show series from all around the world, and again, the creators, producers, writers all come to the festival. And then we show about 50 to 60 of those independently produced pilots in competition. And we have a jury that come out and give awards to those, and we have networks and studios that buy content out of the festival. So we have series that world premiered that are on BBC, ABC, Netflix, Apple TV, Hulu, you know, Showtime, all around the world, and it's something we're really looking to continue to build.
That's great. David, we'd love to hear from you.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Abraham, and I live and work in London, although I've also worked in the television industry in America. My career is now nearly sort of 4 decades in, and it can be described really as a career that's been influenced by the technological changes that have happened in our industry. So when I started work in the 1980s, media was highly concentrated in the UK amongst a small number of TV channels and TV outlets. So that was the pre-digital era. And I started my career, I would have quite liked to have started in the television industry, but actually the funny story was that I applied to do some post-grad training in TV production, and I was rejected. So I was kind of like, right from the very beginning, I was a reject. Didn't get into the industry when I wanted to. So, but I found it easier to get into the advertising business that was making a lot of video content. So the brand side of the business. And for a good 10 or 12 years, I enjoyed learning about media through the advertising side. And then eventually, there was a technological shift that happened with the arrival of digital TV. So we went from a small number of TV channels to almost 100 TV channels in a very short period of time. And that opened up the industry in the UK and around the world, and allowed people like me to move into, I suppose, the broadcast and longer form. And I went to work at Discovery Networks in the UK as they were expanding. And it's amazing to think back that people of my generation found it extraordinary to be there at a time when suddenly you would put the TV on and there would be just a small number of channels, and you would just watch whatever was on. There was no on-demand, and there was no digital at all.
David, put your thing a little closer, they're saying.
You just watched what was there. And suddenly we had channels for documentaries, we had channels for news and history. So it was a real revolution that happened. And all of that content needed marketing, it needed explaining, and I got involved in that side. And then, of course, in the early 2000s, we had the next sort of the big revolution of the internet that arrived. And again, we had to adapt. Now, through all of these big shifts, there was constants. And the constant was, what is a good story? All the way through, I suppose, the passion that I've had for the job that I do comes from the fact that there are so many stories to tell, and the way that you tell those stories matters. And it's great to be part of a community and part of an industry where people have that drive and that passion, because from that comes your audience. It's that way round, and the distribution and technology is a way of getting to an audience in a new way. So that's why it's amazing now to be here and understanding how the big shifts that are occurring in this part of the world, driven by technology, are affecting the way that you are going to tell your stories.
Thank you. Just to give you a little bit of my background, and I think we are of the same generation. I started as an NBC page. It's a kind of an internship program, because I think I got paid $5 an hour. But while I was in the page program, I wrote to every single person I met in the elevator. My job was to seat audiences for various shows. And the only person that responded to me was Martin Scorsese, which was a big hit. And I worked in his office for his assistant for 2 years. Before then, I went on to work for another director, Jonathan Demme. And what I learned being around these incredible storytellers and directors was that it's really up to you as an individual to throw yourself in there, to put yourself out there. So I left working for them, and I decided I wanted to change the world. I became a social worker. And while I was in school for social work, I made a documentary that I sold to PBS on a singing band that met in a homeless shelter. And I think since then I've had about 45 different careers. But when I turned 55, I asked myself, what haven't I done that I really want to do? And what I really wanted to experience was being in a writer's room. I had a lot of friends from college who were successful writers in LA, and my path hadn't led me there. So I went back to school at 55 and got a master's in screenwriting, and the writer's room's doors were not opening for me. And so I decided to create my own writer's rooms. And I would say that one of the biggest passions in my life is leveling the playing field for all voices to have a chance to be heard, especially in the visual storytelling field. So when I learned of Series Fest and met Randy Kleiner, that quickly became, I would say, like one of my number one passions in my life is Series Fest. And it is just incredible to be around creators from all over the world who are brave enough to make their own pilots and put themselves out there. And so I feel like, a big North Star for me is mentorship. And I'd love for you guys to talk a little bit about what programs you have in your businesses that might offer these opportunities.
Sure, absolutely. And I know I talked about produce pilots, but we really help creators from the pitch process all the way through to production. So we have events that we do worldwide that are about pitching, where we really teach and work with people who are interested in learning. You know, the first step is really crafting your story, crafting your pitch. The first thing you have to do is walk in a room and pitch a story to executives. But some kind of great mentorships that we do, we work with amazing storyteller Shonda Rhimes and her company Shondaland, and we give up-and-coming female directors the opportunity to shadow on a full episode of a Shonda Rhimes series. So, for example, our recent winner actually got to shadow on a show called Bridgerton, and they hired her to direct an episode on this upcoming season. They've actually hired several of our winners on the show. David, I know you have a couple as well.
In the industry in the UK, we have similar programs for first-time directors, and particularly first-time female directors. And actually, over the 5 years of our company, more than half of our documentaries have been directed by first-time female directors who've gone on to win awards on our project. So that's an industry initiative that we plug into. But I would also say that mentoring is a two-way thing. People of my generation need to understand how younger audiences are consuming content, the kinds of stories that they are interested in. And in our company, outside the management team, the average age of our company is in the sort of early to mid-30s. And that means that we're understanding, hopefully, what audiences of the future will enjoy, and we will also evolve as a company as well. So recently we created a new team that focuses solely on social media content, storytelling and branded content, and the average age of that team is in its 20s. So what's wonderful about every new technology is it invites in a new generation to work out how to tell stories in a new way.
That's wonderful. I think another thing that I'd love to touch on is kind of the definition of success. I think in television, at least in America, we think, oh well, we're going to have a show on network TV, and we're going to get hired to be in a writer's room. And for me, I think I'm redefining what success means in this industry. We've just touched on how open content is. But also I think what's been a big passion of mine is I work with private citizens, people who have never even thought they could tell a story, and they come to my company with an idea, and we help them. What we do is we throw sort of a mini 3-day writer's room. We help them craft their story, and for some of them, they want to go on and produce an independent film. And the two projects that I'm most proud of right now, they're both international, both about Americans coming to India to go on a birding trip, and the other going to Hungary. And I think, we would be thrilled to work in this region and be able to have stories that you are thinking of here. And I would encourage you that just not to tell yourself no, and that the definition of success is what you decide it is. So talk a little bit about the definition of success for you guys.
I love that. I mean, I agree that I think, we encounter a lot of creators who say the only success is my series on Netflix, for example. And you know what? That's amazing. Of course, we all have dreams, and I hope that happens, and we've seen that happen. But there's only so many, things that they'll fund, so many opportunities for that. But I think it's about sort of also defining, like, what helps you take the next step in your career. So, we have a lot of creators that'll come to Series Fest, and they'll get representation. Maybe they'll get an agent or a manager, or they'll get staffed in a writer's room, or they'll meet another creative partner and produce another pilot or produce another series. I agree with you. I think it's about how, what you define. And of course, we should all have large goals. We should all reach for the stars. But I also think it's good to, have have some realistic things about what is it that's going to help propel you forward. And it might not be the giant leap right off the bat. It might just be a stepping stone and a stepping stone. But that's, truly that's really how the career works for most people.
Yeah, I think
Or
one
the
of the
industry.
things that's just eternally challenging but interesting about being in what we call show business is it's half show, half business. So I'm here with my business partner, Sachin, who spoke yesterday. And I suppose we're two halves of the same brain, that we're passionate about the stories we want to tell and the people we want to work with. But at the same time, we have to pay the bills and we need to earn a living.
It's a business. You said it. I love that. It's important.
So, in a romantic sense, you can hope that if you tell your story well, that you will earn a living. But life isn't really like that. One needs to be assertive and confident and sometimes aggressive about the deals that you're going to do to make sure that the value of your skills is recognized. And that's not easy in the world that we're in, where there's so much concentration of attention that's controlled by an ever smaller number of platforms. And I think this is a challenge for all countries around the world, when so much attention is controlled and concentrated in a way that it wasn't previously. In the UK, again, 20, 30 years ago, most of the attention was captured, the value was captured by entities that were within the UK. And I'm sure the same is the case in Saudi Arabia. Now, more and more of it is leaking into a global system, which, good news for America, is mostly based in America. But the gap is getting bigger, so the challenge is increasing.
Yeah. I would also just add, and for some reason they asked me to move my microphone away from my face. So please, sorry I'm so loud. But I would also add that collaboration is incredibly important. And, sometimes in a day, the definition of success is reaching out, emailing someone, and having kind of determination and patience.
Yeah.
What do you think? Oh, and I want to give a compliment to this city, and I think what you're capable of. I had come and I forgot all my business cards, and at 10:30 at night, I called a printing place, and by 11 o'clock, my business cards arrived. So I want to make sure you get those before you leave. But I mean, that is not even possible in Denver, in New York, with an hour having. So I think what's exciting about this part of the world is, what is at your fingertips. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the future of global storytelling and the future of television in general, and how local can become global, and what your experience with that has been.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think that, the most important thing is, of course, telling authentic stories to your community. And then, of course, maybe, looking at what are the opportunities from also a global perspective. And I think here there's tons of opportunity for that. There's also tons of opportunity for collaborations and partnerships and potentially co-productions. And I think it's really exciting. I mean, I would say that's the reason I'm personally here, is because of how excited I am about what the potential is in this region to in the film and TV space. And, you've got to, one foot in front of the other. It doesn't all happen at once, but there's a lot of great stories to be told and to be heard and to be created here that I would love to see and be a part of, and get to help, hopefully reach a global perspective as well. But of course, to tell a story here, you've got to have the authenticity. And so it's really important that we embrace the creative community here and help build the creative community here to help tell those stories.
Do you have anything to add, David?
Yeah, I mean, I think we touched on some of this yesterday in our discussion around is the global audience responding to the authentic local story?
Right.
Or can you construct stories that incorporate components like your film idea, where people are traveling to different parts of the world? I think both are probably valid approaches, but I'm particularly interested in understanding, by being here, we just saw a previous presentation about one of the biggest local hits that's on Netflix. how would that then travel to a US or a
Yes.
European audience? I think that's us understanding what those storytelling drivers that could be universal for the whole planet, that start here, originate here, the values, the modernization, the culture, the engineering, the architecture,
That's right.
the physicality of the country can become something that can be universally appealing. And I think whether it's part of the history or part of the modernity, that could be captured in a way that would really capture the imagination of a global audience. I think that's probably the most interesting challenge ahead for the creative community here.
Yeah.
And I would just wanted to add too, I mean, technology, which is such a big, obviously, part of this industry, and here is booming. And, I'd say, like, there's obviously the traditional ways of making television, and that's important. But, I just go back to, are there other ways that you can be creating content here, like the independent model, where you can create episodes for a lot less than a traditional studio or network could do? And then what are those opportunities to sell globally? Because all of these networks, streamers, et cetera, need content. And part of the issue right now is it costs so much money per episode that they're scaling back and scaling back. And so is there an opportunity to do things differently to, and I think that could be something here that could be a whole other way to approach the system.
Yes, I think we would love more than anything to bring Series Fest to this region and help educate and create independent pilots here.
I think we might be getting.
Our time is up. If anyone has a burning question, or you can let us know when we're standing around. But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you all for being here.
This has been a real privilege and an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.